What's going on, everyone? In today's episode, we're going to talk about the most two common questions that come up about alliums. How do they grow? And how do I know which ones are best for my garden? Let's go. The first thing I want to do is talk about alliums, because if you don't understand alliums and how they grow, it's going to be very difficult to be able to understand choosing good ones for your garden. So the first thing I want to do is touch on alliums. Now, alliums are an umbrella term given to a group of vegetables that all can fall into the same family. Now, that family is like an onion family, right? So it is more complex than that, but we can call them onion family crops. They all exhibit the same kind of flavor profile, growth habits that basically designate them all the same. It'd be no different than dogs, right? All dogs, there's small dogs, there's big dogs, there's Chihuahuas, and there's Pit Bulls, and there's Great Danes. They're all dogs, but they look different, but they all exhibit similar traits that keep them in the same family, the canine family. And because of that, this is an umbrella term given to onion-like crops. And in that umbrella, we have onions. We also have leeks. We also have shallots. We have bunching onions. We have ramps, and we have garlic. Now, these are all different alliums that fall under that category. Now, they are a root crop that has modified leaves. And these modified leaves essentially they behave like leaves. They biologically will behave exactly the way a leaf would. It photosynthesizes, it creates energy for the plant. The plant creates many new ones every single year, but then it does not look like a leaf. It does not look like a leaf that you and I have come to know. Like a maple leaf compared to an onion leaf, vastly different, but they behave exactly the same way. And these modified leaves are what generates energy for the root. And the root is actually a bulb. It's a bulb, much like tulips, much like daffodils. That bulb is an energy store for future seasons. And what we're doing as gardeners is we are essentially generating energy with the plant during the main growing season and storing that energy in what we are harvesting, which is the onion bulb itself. And there's a variety of different onion-like bulbs that we're harvesting, but that is the main goal. We're not harvesting for the leaves typically, we're harvesting for the bulb. And so knowing that, now I want to talk about how to select the best onion crops for your garden based on where you live. The first thing I want to talk about is how to choose the right type of onion. Now, this is typically where these questions come up. I'm going to be starting some more onions, which is what I'm doing right now, and that's what prompted this video. And when you are selecting onions, you're going to come in contact, if you've never grown them before from seed, you're going to come in contact with a couple different terms. Now, that term is day period. And you might be confused when you pick up a packet of seeds and have it say long day or short day or intermediate day onion. And that might confuse you. Hopefully this will reduce that confusion, because it's really simple. Onions, we're talking about bulbing onions, not bunching. We'll talk about that in a second. Bulbing onions are sensitive to the amount of daylight they get. This is known as photosensitivity. And that photo period is the duration of time and the amount of hours per day that they are exposed to sunlight. And they need a certain amount of daylight in order to set that bulbing cycle. If you have a short day in a long day zone, you'll end up with beautiful tops, but no bulb. If you have a long day onion in a short day zone, you'll have beautiful tops, but no bulb. And then there's intermediate, which is a group of onions that are kind of genetically bred for being able to be grown in a long day zone or a short day zone. They exhibit traits of both long day and short day onions, and it gives you a little more versatility. The downside is there's not as much variety in that category. And how you know what zone you are in is based on looking on a latitude map. If you pull up a latitude map, I'll pull one up, I'll have one thrown up on the screen. A latitude map are the horizontal lines overlapping a map, and it basically shows you where you're at north or south of the equator. And what we're looking for is long day onions should be planted north of the 37-degree latitude line. So if you are north of the 37-degree latitude line, you can grow a long day onion. If you are south of the 37-degree latitude line, you're going to be growing a short day onion. Reason being is states that are north, or countries, if you're watching outside of the US, still applies. the amount of daylight or sunlight that you're going to get north of that 37-degree latitude line is going to be slightly longer. Your days are going to be slightly longer, and you're going to, because of the way the Earth is tilted, you're going to be experiencing slightly longer days with slightly longer amounts of sunlight, and that will result in an onion that needs longer photosensitivity periods. That means more photo period, and that will help to regulate the bulbing cycle. That is what's going to give you success. If you ignore that, you're going to end up with beautiful tops and no bulbs, no matter how you slice it. Now, there is the intermediate day onions. Where does that fall? That falls within about a 15-degree margin from that 37-degree latitude line. You can go up roughly 15 degrees north or 15 degrees south, and that will give you that variability where you could, in theory, grow an intermediate day onion regardless of that band, and that's going to give you the ability to grow the intermediate day onions as well. Now that we've understood that, we're going to talk about other types of alliums, because there's lots of other alliums that you can grow that don't have anything to do with how much sunlight you get, like bunching onions. When it comes to growing bunching onions, the really nice thing is you don't have to worry about how much sunlight they get. As long as you get roughly 5 to 7 hours of sunlight, they're going to do great. And that's because you don't need to worry about how much or how long the days are or anything like that. You're just growing them for essentially the greens and that little white, tiny little ball that they form. And that is essentially all you're growing bunching onions for. You grow them in bunches, and that's how they get their name. They grow in bunches because spacing is not as much of a concern. The turnaround time is much faster. I absolutely love them. And so for us, a variety of bunching onions we might grow is Tokyo long white bunching. There's a lot of different bunching onion varieties. There's Hashiko. There are a whole ton of different bunching onion varieties. But at the end of the day, the great thing is that they can be grown anywhere, and that's really nice. Now I want to talk about shallots. Shallots are not daylight sensitive either. Shallots do not require a certain amount of sunlight. They will form a bulb regardless if you're south of the 37-degree latitude line or north of the 37-degree latitude line. They will still form bulbs as well. Then you have ramps. Ramps are very much the same way. They are basically just like essentially, it's like an onion meets a bunching onion meets like wild garlic. It's very delicious. They grow wild. They are amazing, but ramps are not photosensitive either. Garlic is not either. Really, onions are the only crop where you have to worry about where you're at on the map based on the results you want to get. The next thing I want to talk about is the question of seeds versus sets. Which one is best? Now, if you've been growing onions or if you've done some research on growing onions, you will hear the topic come up about seeds versus sets. And the first thing I want to talk about is, what is a set? A set is essentially an immature or kind of short period grown crop that's then thrown into storage, is pulled out of the ground, shipped to you to put in your garden with the intention of you growing it out to completion. It's essentially a baby version of whatever that crop could be. And so typically you're going to find shallot sets, you will find onion sets, you will find garlic seed sets, and these three different crops are really the only three that you're going to come across for sets. Bunching onions don't have sets. You just would start those from seed. With ramps, you're going to find those probably in the wild. You might have ramp seed, I'm not sure, but regardless, you typically find those out in the wild. Those are not really commonly found in seeds. And then you have leeks, and leeks are not sets either. You're not going to find leek sets. You're going to find leek seed. And so the only three that you really have to look at are like bulbing onions, shallots, and garlic. Now, you're going to hear this widely contested. People will say, oh, you should always start from sets, or you should never start from sets. I am more of the camp of the option is yours once you have the information. Now, once you've selected if you need a long day or a short day onion, and you understand that, the next question to ask is, should you be starting from seeds or sets? And when you're starting from seed, you are essentially given way more for your dollar. You're getting, again, like a packet of onion seed. There's like 250 onion seeds for $2 over at migardener.com. Whereas if you were buying onion sets, you might get a pack of 10, 15, 20, or 30 onion sets for 5 to 15, I've seen up to $20, which is like, in my opinion, a ton of money. I mean, you could grow a lot of onions for the same amount of money if you were starting from seed. Now, what is the big difference? You're getting not only a better value, you're also getting more security in your garden. Now, when I say security, I'm really saying security from them going to seed. If an onion goes to seed, it forms a flower stalk from the center of the bulb, and that will never go away. If you take your onion indoors for the winter to store it, and it has a seed stalk, that seed stalk will rot away and your onion will be completely rotten within a couple months. So you cannot have a flower stalk form. Well, how does the flower stalk form? Well, it flowers because onions are what's known as a biennial. And that's the biggest crutch with onion sets or any type of set, whether it's a shallot set or an onion set. And that's because when they start to flower, the flower ends up ruining the actual harvest. And because they're a biennial, they flower the second year. That's what makes them a biennial. They will grow the first year, they will go through dormancy, and then they will grow the second year, but then they will also focus on flowering that second year. And that's the problem, is onion sets are grown, they're immature, they are grown, they're thrown into cold storage, they don't know that winter hasn't passed, and then you throw them out in your garden, and then what happens is they get larger, but they also will focus on flowering. And that is a big reason why I advocate using seeds, not sets. Now again, the option is yours. Are they easier to plant? Absolutely. Do they all flower the second year? No, they don't all flower, but a large majority will flower, and the risk of it flowering is really high. So much so that I advocate starting from seeds and not sets. So I just want to set that record straight because I get that question asked a lot, and a lot of gardeners think that because it's a convenience factor that that's going to be for them, but then they end up with almost no harvest in the end because they almost all go to flower. And that just has to do with biologically, they are a biennial. And if they're not stored correctly in cold storage and they come out of cold storage and are planted, they may flower. So at the end of the day, the choice is up to you. There are going to be people that have results with onion sets and advocate for that. There's going to be people like me that have more success with seeds, and we advocate for that. At the end of the day, though, it's your garden, your rules. So it's not up to me to tell you. That is up to you to decide. Do you want convenience or do you want value and security? Definitely things to consider. And the final thing I want to talk about is how we should be planting, or how I recommend you to plant your onion seeds. Now, we practice a method called multi-sowing. Multi-sowing is, in my opinion, one of the best ways to grow onions because you're going to be getting the most seeds planted and the most seedlings for the amount of space they take up. Now, this only applies to starting seeds. If you're going with sets, skip this video and move on. But if you want to learn something, we are going to talk about multi-sowing. It's really quick, really simple. Now, typically people are going to go to plug trays like this. This is a 50 cell plug tray. I've got a 128 cell plug tray here. And that means that there are 128 cells in this 10-inch by 20-inch area. And this one here has got 50 cells in a 10-inch by 20-inch area. But regardless of whatever size plugs you go with, the problem is that they're very wasteful on space when it comes to how many onions you can get in that amount of space. What I prefer to do is a process called multi-sowing, which is where we take a cup like this, a 3-inch pot, and this 3-inch pot, we're going to fill up with soil. We're going to compress that soil down, and then we're going to sprinkle in 15 to 20 seeds in that area. There's about 20, maybe even 25 seeds in this little pot right here. And as they grow up, they're going to grow up because they don't have leaves. They have modified leaves, going back to what we talked about in the beginning. And those modified leaves allow them to grow very closely to each other. The roots are also very wiry. Because they do not have a very webby root system, and the roots are instead very wiry, they can be separated very easily. And because of that, transplanting out into the garden is as simple as dumping them out when the plants are grown, separating them out from that root ball, and then planting them individually into the garden. In my opinion, you're going to want to use this method simply because in this area here, I could have, 300 to 500 onion plants in this area, versus the same area, I might have, if I planted 1 or 2 seeds per cell, I might have, 100 in this tray. In that tray, I might have 128, enough for like one little seedling per cell there. I much prefer to multi-sow over single sow. That's just my preference. From my experience, that is what I find the best. And that is what I would advocate for you so that you can save precious space when seed starting. So I think that's honestly just about it when it comes to growing onions. There's one final little bit of information, and it comes down to fertilizing. I think this is the last thing. If not, we'll do a part 2. The final thing is fertilizing. When you're growing your onions, regardless of whatever crop it is, whether it's shallots, leeks, bunching onions, bulbing onions, ramps, doesn't matter. You want to focus on nitrogen. Nitrogen is the main focus. So many gardeners turn to phosphorus, thinking, well, I'm growing a root crop. And roots and shoots and flowers, or roots and flowers primarily focus on phosphorus, right? They focus on phosphorus to help those areas of development. The problem is you are growing leaves first, then the roots or the bulb second. And because you're growing those leaves, those modified leaves, you want to focus on nitrogen. The entire time that you are growing an onion or any type of onion crop, the focus should be on primarily nitrogen. Don't neglect the other two, the other macronutrients. Don't neglect your micronutrients, but focus on the nitrogen, because a high nitrogen fertilizer is going to give you and promote more leaf growth, and more leaf growth will give you a larger harvest. Just thought I'd throw that in there. That is about it. I think that's honestly it for how to grow your onions, everything you need to know to grow onions. If there's any other questions you have, throw them in the comments box down below. Throw a like up there if you did enjoy, and share this video with a friend if you think they'd enjoy it. I hope I helped demystify onions, and I hope it helped in some way. So as always, this is Luke from the MI Gardener channel, reminding you to grow bigger. Take care, everyone. See ya. Bye. Hey, thank you so much for watching today's video. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed, consider clicking this one. You'll probably enjoy it just as much. I want to thank you for your viewership, because without it, this channel would not be as amazing as it is. Also, if you haven't subscribed, consider subscribing. It's free, and we upload videos every Monday, Wednesday, or Friday. We also have vegetable seeds, fertilizer, or tools. If you need any of those, consider visiting migardener.com. Links will be in the description box below. We've got you covered. And as always, we'll see you all in the garden. Take care. Bye.